Many Christians believe that upon death we enter our eternal destiny immediately. This belief is largely based on a handful of Bible verses, often called proof texts. But are these verses really teaching that the dead are awake and aware before the resurrection? In this video, we're going to examine each of the most frequently cited passages used to support the idea of a conscious intermediate state. We'll show why these verses do not contradict the clear biblical teaching of soul sleep, that the dead are unconscious until the resurrection. In Luke 23:43, Jesus tells the thief on the cross, "Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." The original Greek had no pronunciation. The verse could just as easily be read, "Truly I say to you today, you will be with me in paradise." This preserves Jesus' promise, but it aligns with the resurrection hope. Jesus himself did not ascend to the Father that day. So how could the thief be with him in paradise? In Philippians 1:23-24, Paul writes, "I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far." Paul is expressing his desire for resurrection, not a disembodied conscious afterlife. He also says that he desires to depart, not that he expects to be with Christ instantly. 2 Timothy 4:8 makes this clear. Paul expects to receive his crown on that day, not at death. 2 Corinthians 5:8 is often quoted to mean that when we die, we immediately go to be with God. But Paul is contrasting two states, our current mortal life and our future resurrected life. He says we groan for our heavenly dwelling and to be clothed, not souls floating in heaven. The context is resurrection, not a conscious intermediate state. Luke 16:19-31, with the rich man and Lazarus, is the strongest passage used to defend a conscious afterlife. But this is only a parable, not a literal account. It uses popular Jewish imagery of the time, not to teach doctrine about the afterlife, but to rebuke the Pharisees for their greed and hard hearts. Parables use symbolic language to convey moral truth, not literal timelines of the afterlife. Moreover, the purpose of this parable was not meant to teach that there is consciousness in death. The purpose of this parable was meant to teach that between the saved and the lost, a great gulf remains eternally fixed after death. In Revelation 6:9-10, John sees souls under the altar crying out, "How long, O Lord?" Revelation is filled with symbolic imagery. The souls here symbolize the martyrdom and suffering of the saints, not disembodied spirits speaking. It's similar to how Abel's blood cried out from the ground in Genesis 4:10. We also need to account that the souls cannot literally be in heaven, as this would contradict a myriad of other plain scriptures. In Matthew 22:31-32, Jesus says, "God is not the God of the dead, but of the living." Jesus is providing the resurrection, not a conscious afterlife. He's arguing that the patriarchs must live again in the resurrection, or else God's promises to them would be void. It's about future hope, not present awareness. Some claim Matthew 17:1-3 proves Moses and Elijah were alive in a conscious state, but this was a vision. Jesus himself called it that. It was a prophetic preview of his glory and kingdom, not proof of the dead being conscious before the resurrection. Revelation 7:9-17 talks about a multitude before the throne, clothed in white robes. The text says they came out of the great tribulation, implying a post-resurrection reality. The scene is visionary and symbolic, not a literal snapshot of current events. Revelation 20:4 is often cited to show the saints live with Christ before the resurrection, but the verse explicitly states they came to life and reigned. This is after the first resurrection. It supports bodily resurrection, not a conscious state before it. In 2 Kings 2:11, Elijah was taken to heaven in a whirlwind. Is this proof of consciousness after death? No, Elijah did not die. He was taken alive, like Enoch. This is an exception, not the rule. It doesn't contradict soul sleep for the dead. Some say 2 Peter 2:9 implies the wicked are already suffering. Actually, it says the unjust are reserved, held back, until the day of judgment. It supports the soul sleep view. It doesn't refute it. Some claim Jude 1:14 proves saints are already with Christ consciously, but Jude is quoting Enoch's prophecy of the second coming, not the intermediate state. The saints are resurrected and glorified at Christ's return, just as 1 Thessalonians 4:16-17 says. Philippians 1:21 is often misunderstood to mean that Paul expected to immediately go to heaven at death, but that idea is not actually stated in the verse. To live as Christ means Paul's life is fully dedicated to serving Christ. To die as gain means death means rest from labor, and the next conscious moment will be resurrection and eternal life with Christ. Paul clarifies his hope later in the chapter. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But even here, he doesn't say when he will be with Christ. As a Jew who believed in bodily resurrection, Paul looked forward to the day of Christ, not instant heaven at death. Philippians 1:21 does not teach immediate life after death. It teaches that death is a gain for believers because it leads to the resurrection and eternal life, not because the soul floats off to heaven. When we take these passages in context, none of them require belief in a conscious intermediate state. In fact, many of them point us to the resurrection, our true hope. The Bible consistently describes death as sleep. The dead know nothing. They await the voice of Christ at the resurrection. Until then, they rest in peace. The resurrection is not an afterthought. It is the gospel's heartbeat. Don't trade it for unbiblical traditions.